The streets of New York City in the 1970s were a far cry from the misty landscapes of feudal Japan, yet they provide the perfect battleground for a modern-day Ronin, a masterless warrior wandering through a world that no longer has a place for him. Travis Bickle, the brooding protagonist of Taxi Driver, is not simply a troubled Vietnam veteran or a man teetering on the edge of madness. He is a warrior adrift in an urban wasteland, searching for meaning to the only means he understands: violence. Directed by Martin Scorsese and written by Paul Schrader, Taxi Driver is often described as a grim character study, a psychological descent into paranoia and rage. But beneath its neon-lit grime and existential musings lies a story deeply rooted in the samurai and cowboy archetypes that have shaped cinema for decades. Schrader himself has acknowledged the film's inspirations, pulling from sources as varied as Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground and John Ford's The Searchers, and the stoic warrior figures of samurai cinema. The result is a film that, while firmly planted in the disillusioned post-Vietnam world of 1970s America, echoes the themes and aesthetics of an older, more mythic tradition. Travis Bickle doesn't belong. Not to the city, not to the people he encounters, and maybe not even to himself. When Taxi Driver opens, we are immediately dropped into his world, a restless, sleepless existence where time bleeds together under the glow of neon lights and the haze of exhaust fumes. Played with an eerie precision by Robert De Niro, Travis is a Vietnam War veteran, but whatever sense of purpose he might have once had has long since evaporated. Now he drifts through the night, taking whatever fares he can find, observing the streets of New York with a mix of detachment and revulsion. His cab is both his sanctuary and his prison. It shields him from the world even as it forces him to confront it. Night after night, his insomnia, whether a lingering effect of war or an affliction of the soul, leaves him adrift, floating through the city's underbelly like a ghost. The pimps, the drug dealers, the desperate and the damned. He sees them all from behind the wheel, narrating his disgust in a diary only he will ever read. All the animals come out at night, he writes, cataloguing the filth he believes has overrun the city, as he is taking stock before a purge. Travis doesn't fall in love as much as he fixates. When he first lays eyes on Betsy, played by Sybil Shepherd, she isn't just a woman, she's a symbol, a beacon of purity standing above the filth he wades through every night. She works for Charles Pantine, a presidential candidate promising change. He watches her from afar, standing outside the campaign office in his rumpled jacket, as though she's the answer to a question he hasn't quite figured out how to ask. His approach is direct, almost childlike in his bluntness. He tells her she looks lonely, that he knows what loneliness is. He isn't flirting, he's confessing, and somehow it works, at least at first. Betsy, amused by his odd confidence, agrees to coffee, indulging his earnest if misguided attempt at connection. But Travis isn't looking for companionship, he's looking for salvation. He doesn't understand the world the way most people do. His social cues are mismatched, his logic frayed. When he invites Betsy to a movie, it isn't to see the latest romantic drama or an art house classic. He takes her to an adult film theater, a place he frequents in his lonely, aimless nights. In his mind, there's nothing strange about this. After all, it's just a movie. But for Betsy, it's the final red flag, the undeniable proof that something about Travis is deeply off. She leaves, disgusted. And just like that, the fantasy crumbles. Betsy is no longer an angel or a savior. Now she's just another part of the world that rejects him, another reason to be angry. His hurt curls into resentment, his rejection twisting into rage. If he cannot be accepted by the world of normal people, then we carve out his own place, through force, if necessary. Betsy's rejection is the moment Travis stops searching for a belonging. From here on out, he will look for something else entirely. He will look for a mission. Like a soldier sharpening his blade before battle, he arms himself, trains himself, reshapes himself into something new. It starts with the guns. He buys them from a sleazy hotel room dealer, a 44 Magnum, a Smith & Wesson, a Colt revolver. He straps them into his body, concealing them in a custom-built sliding rig beneath his jacket. And then there's the mirror. This is where he speaks, where he rehearses, where he wills himself into existence. "You talking to me?" he asks, staring into his own reflection, testing the persona he's building. It's a performance, but also a declaration. In this moment, Travis isn't just an outcast cab driver anymore. He's someone to be feared, someone who demands a response. The phrase, improvised by Robert De Niro in The Scene, becomes more than a line of dialogue. It is a challenge, a war cry from a man who has been ignored for too long. But Rage needs a target, and Travis finds this in Charles Palantin, the presidential candidate Betsy once admired. In his twisted logic, Palantin isn't just a politician. He's a symbol of a system that Travis despises, the corrupt machine that allows the city's filth to thrive. Killing him, Travis believes, would be an act of cleansing, a way to rid the world of one more source of its rot. He stalks Palantin's campaign events, lurking in the crowds, testing the weight of the gun in his coat pocket. He is ready, but the moment never comes. Just as he moves in for the kill, Secret Service agents spot him, their eyes locking onto his suspicious presence. He flees into the streets, his assassination plot unraveling before it can begin. Travis has spent weeks preparing for violence. He has stripped himself down and rebuilt himself as a warrior. Now, with no political target to destroy, he does what all lost men do. He looks for another fight. Betsy was supposed to be his salvation, Palantin his target, but both of these paths crumbled beneath him. So the universe, or at least the dark, near-lit streets of New York, offered him something else. Iris. She's a minor, too young to be here, to be walking these streets, to be working for a man like Sport. When Travis first sees her, it's in passing, a blur of movement as she is pulled into a cab by her pimp. She's another casualty of the world Travis despises, another sign of the rot creeping into every corner of the city. But unlike Betsy, unlike Palantin, Travis believes he can save her, and this time he won't fail. Their interactions are tinged with an eerie blend of tenderness and control. He takes her to breakfast, gives her a lecture about the life she's living, as if she's simply lost her way and needs to be reminded of the right path. But Iris isn't some naive runaway. She shrugs him off, tells him that Sport takes care of her, that this life isn't so bad. Travis doesn't hear her. He can't, because in his mind, she isn't a person making her own choices. She's a victim, one he has been chosen to save. Of course he isn't entirely wrong. Iris is a minor, pressured into despicable acts. And at first, he provides a solution that is equitable, even sensible. He hands her money, telling her to leave, to go to a commune in Vermont where she can be free. But the offer isn't entirely selfless. It's an offer born from equal parts desperation and delusion. He wants her to escape, but more than that, he wants her redemption to be his redemption. When she doesn't take the out, when words fail him, he turns to the only language he truly understands. If she won't leave, then he will make her leave. And if Sport is standing in the way, then Sport must be destroyed. Travis Bickle doesn't enter the brothel like a man. He enters like an executioner. When he storms through the doors, he does so with a singular, unwavering purpose. Sport, the slick-talking pimp who leers from the stoop, is the first to go. A bullet to the gut drops him. Travis isn't done. He moves through the building with mechanical precision, each shot an exorcism of the filth he believes has infected the city. The scene that follows is nothing short of carnage. Blood splatters across the dingy wallpaper. Bodies collapse in twitching heaps. Travis himself is shot, but he doesn't stop. He can't. The brother's owner, a grotesque gatekeeper of exploitation, takes a bullet to the throat. Another man caught in the crossfire tries to plead for his life. It doesn't matter. Travis is beyond reason now, operating on a code only he understands. By the time the gunfire stops, the hall is painted red. Then, silence. Travis, bloody and broken, staggers into Iris' room. She's screaming, trembling, her small frame backed into a corner. This was supposed to be her salvation, but instead, she has witnessed a slaughter. And Travis, her so-called savior, is barely standing. His breath is ragged. His hands are slick with blood. This was supposed to end differently. He was supposed to die. With one final act of resolve, he raises the gun to his own head and pulls the trigger. Click. Empty. He tries again. Nothing. The bullets are gone. His grand martyrdom, his violent transformation into something greater, has collapsed in an instant. He slumps down, blood pooling beneath him, his hands shaking as he raises two fingers to his temple. It's his final statement, his silent admission that it's never about saving Iris. It was about saving himself, while burning out in one final act of meaning. But fate, it seems, had other plans. The city law is a good story. It doesn't matter if it's true, as long as it's simple, digestible, something people can rally behind. And so, in the aftermath of blood and bullets, Travis Bickle, the man who stormed the brothel in violent frenzy, is reborn, not as a madman, not as a killer, but as a hero. The newspapers paint him as a vigilante savior, the cab driver who single-handedly took on the filth of the city and emerged victorious. The letter from Iris's parents is filled with gratitude, thanking him for bringing their daughter home. There's no mention of the bodies he left behind, no question about his motives. In their eyes, he did what no one else could. He saved her, and that in the end is all that matters. But not for Travis. It's a bizarre, almost cruel irony. The city has once rejected Travis, now welcomes him back with open arms. He's no longer an outcast, he's respected, admired. Even Betsy, the woman who once recoiled from him, now looks at him with something close to fascination when she steps into his cab. There is no victory here for Travis, no real sense of triumph. He has played the part of the hero, but the man beneath remains unchanged. The final moments of Taxi Driver are deceptively quiet. Travis, driving to the city, is calm, collected. Then something shifts. A fleeting moment. A quick adjustment of the rearview mirror. A flicker in his eyes. Something is still unsettled. A warrior without a master is a dangerous thing. In feudal Japan, samurai were bound by loyalty to their lord, to their clan, to the rigid expectations of Bushido, the code of honor that dictated their lives. But what happened when that loyalty was severed? When the war ended or the master fell, or the world simply moved on without them? These men became Ronin, wandering swordsmen without a cause, without a place, without a clear reason to exist. Some sold their skills to the highest bidder, becoming mercenaries or hired killers. Others turned to crime, abandoned by the system that had once given them purpose. And then there were those who drifted, clinging to their code, searching for a reason to keep fighting. The Ronin has long been a tragic figure in Japanese history and storytelling, a man caught between two worlds, one that defined him and one that has no use for him. In the films of Akira Kurosawa, these masterless warriors often walk a lonely path, navigating a world where morality is no longer black and white. They live by old values, but they are out of time, relics of a past that is slipping away. Similarly, Travis Bickle is a man without a tether. He has no family to anchor him, no friends to confide in, no community to claim him as their own. His past, though largely unspoken, looms over him. His taxi is his domain, his wandering territory. He offers no companionship, only a barrier between himself and the world outside. Like the masterless samurai who roamed the countryside, Travis moves through the city streets, night after night, watching, waiting, searching for something. Though even he is not sure what, he keeps a ledger of filth and corruption, taking stock of the decay around him. Pimps, junkies, thieves, predators. He's disgusted by them, repulsed by the moral rot that seems to fester unchecked. But there is an irony in its self-righteousness. The Ronin of legend often saw themselves as morally superior to the lords they refused to serve, positioning themselves as lone arbiters of justice. Travis follows that same pattern, believing himself above the filth he observes from his cab window. He isn't like them, he insists. He's better. His growing obsession with violence, his rigid view of the world, his inability to connect with people, these things do not make him a hero, they make him dangerous. Like many Ronin, Travis drifts between courses, trying to assign himself a mission. First he fixates on Betsy. When her vision is shattered, he turns his attention to Charles Palantin, imagining a grand politically charged act of rebellion. But even that slips through his grasp, and so finally he lands on Iris, a noble cause, a reason to fight, a purpose. But this is where the myth of the Ronin crumbles. In stories, these warriors often found redemption through their final, decisive action, avenging a fallen master, restoring honor, sacrificing themselves for a greater good. But Travis is not a mythic figure. He's not righteous. His quest does not lead to salvation, only to more blood, more violence, more death, leaving in the end a dangerous mind left loose in the world, hailed as a hero, a wandering swordsman looking for the next battle. Cinema has a way of carrying myths across time and place. The wandering samurai were a staple of Japanese film long before Travis Bickle began his aimless journey through the streets of New York. But Taxi Driver is not just thematically similar to samurai cinema. It borrows its very essence, its aesthetic, its moral ambiguity from the likes of Akira Kurosawa and Masaki Kobayashi. Take Yojimbo, Kurosawa's tale of a nameless Ronin, played by Toshiro Mifune, who drifts into a town ruled by crime and corruption. The town is rotten, its leaders corrupt, its people desperate, and so the Ronin takes it upon himself to set things right, not through nobility, but through manipulation and violence. He pits rival factions against one another, watching as they destroy themselves. He's not a savior, nor is he entirely just. He's simply a man who has decided that the world is broken, and that he alone will fix it. And then there is Harakiri, Masaki Kobayashi's haunting deconstruction of the Bushido code. Where Yojimbo plays with the notion of the wandering warrior, Harakiri tears it apart. The film follows a desperate Ronin who challenges the rigid, hypocritical system that has left him with no future. It is a story of honor turned sour, of a warrior class so consumed by its own rules that it has become blind to its own cruelty. Harakiri critiques the very concept of honor-driven self-destruction, exposing it as a hollow ritual. Both Yojimbo and Harakiri present samurai not as noble warriors, but as relics of a system that has abandoned them, adrift, violent and desperately searching for a cause that may not exist at all. In the quiet corners of the 18th century Japan, a samurai turned monk sat down to write a book that would shape the way warriors saw themselves for generations to come. His name was Yamamoto Tsunetomo. His work, Hagakure, which translates to Hidden Leaves, was not a history book or a military manual. At its core, Hagakure is a philosophical reckoning with a simple but daunting idea: the way of the warriors found in death. This was not a call to reckless self-destruction, nor an encouragement of mindless violence. Instead, it was a lesson in acceptance. To Tsunetomo, a true warrior was one who had already let go of his fear of death, who lived each day with the unwavering knowledge that his life was expendable in service of something greater. Death, when faced with clarity and purpose, was not a failure, it was the highest expression of loyalty and honor. This idea was not meant to be morbid, though to modern sensibilities it might seem that way. It was about stripping away hesitation, about acting with absolute sincerity. A warrior who was unafraid of death was a warrior who could move with certainty, who would not falter in the face of fear or indecision. The lesson was simple: if death is inevitable, why not meet it on your own terms? But for most people, survival is instinctive. The human mind is wired to avoid danger, to hesitate when faced with a life or death decision, to cling to whatever fragile thread keeps existence intact. But Hagakure offers a different perspective. One that turns this instinct on its head. To a true warrior, it argues, hesitation is the real enemy. In its pages, Hagakure romanticizes death, not as a tragedy, but as a path to purity. If a samurai is ever faced with a choice between life and death, he should always without question choose death, not because life has no value, but because a life spent in fear of death is no life at all. The hesitation that makes men falter, that causes them to overthink or second guess. This, to Hagakure, is a form of weakness. A true warrior moves forward, unburdened by doubt, unconcerned with consequence. He acts. This is not a philosophy of careful strategy. It doesn't encourage patience or moral contemplation. It is fatalistic, almost nihilistic in its purity. Death is not just honorable, it is the truest expression of a warrior's purpose. In that belief, Hagakure transforms death from something to be feared into something almost sacred. A man who has always embraced his own destruction cannot be threatened, cannot be manipulated, cannot be controlled. He is, in the eyes of Hagakure, truly free. It is a code designed for men with nothing left to lose, for warriors whose world has already abandoned them, for those who see the end not as something to be avoided, but as a final inevitable act of meaning. But what happens when the warrior's actions fail? When the cause he fights for slips through his grasp, when his mission crumbles beneath him? Failure in most cultures is something to be corrected, a setback to be learned from, a mistake to be overcome. But Hagakure sees things differently. In its view, failure is not a source of shame, it is an opportunity, a chance for purity, for redemption, for one final act of meaning, and often that act comes in the form of self-sacrifice. This idea has shaped the way samurai have been portrayed in cinema for decades. Many films take Hagakure's philosophy to heart, crafting stories of warriors whose time has passed. There's something undeniably romantic about the idea of a solitary hero, the lone figure who walks through a world of chaos untouched, self-reliant, and answering only to his own code. He's an enforcer, a mythic force who steps in where civilization fails. America has always been drawn to this figure, but beneath that admiration lies something deeper, a response to cultural alienation, a way to make sense of a disillusionment. In the golden age of Hollywood, this hero was a cowboy, John Wayne standing tall in a dust-choked town, hand hovering over his holster. Clint Eastwood's man with no name, cigar clenched between his teeth, eyes scanning the horizon. But as America changed, so did its heroes. The post-Vietnam era brought a different kind of lone warrior, one who no longer fit as neatly into the role of a noble enforcer. The country was haunted by a war that had shattered its sense of purpose. The heroes that emerged from its periods weren't gunslingers in frontier towns. They were broken men navigating urban decay, clinging to outdated warrior codes that no longer applied. Wars are supposed to have winners. That's the story we tell ourselves. That battles are fought for a cause, that sacrifice led to something greater, that warriors return home draped in victory. But Vietnam didn't fit that narrative. Unlike World War II, where the lines between good and evil were drawn in bold strokes, Vietnam was murky, a conflict with no clear heroes, no grand triumph. It was America's first modern war without a satisfying ending, and when the soldiers came home, they were met not with parades, but with silence, or worse, contempt. This was the world in which Taxi Driver emerged. Released in 1976, just a year after the fall of Saigon, the old myths of honor and heroism had collapsed under the weight of body counts and political scandal. The war was over, but its ghost still walked the streets, and among them was Travis Bickle. At its heart, Taxi Driver is a tragedy, not just of one man, but of a society that doesn't know what to do with the warriors he creates. Travis Bickle is lost, not because he lacks strength, but because the world he returns to offers him no path forward. But if there's one thing we can take away from stories like this, it's that the past doesn't have to dictate the future. The myths we tell ourselves about strength, about honor, these are not set in stone. They change as we change. And the most dangerous thing we can do is cling too tightly to an identity that no longer serves us. There will always be people who feel like outsiders, who struggle to find their place, who believe they are built for something greater, but don't know where to put that energy. The challenge is not in erasing those instincts, but in reshaping them. Strength doesn't have to be violent. Purpose doesn't have to be self-destructive. For Travis, the story ends with uncertainty, and for the rest of us, the choice remains. Do we fight battles that no longer need to be fought? Or do we learn how to put the weapons down and build something new?